our podcast, Keeping It Real.
I was born in Jordan. I came to Canada as a refugee back in 2000 with my family. Grew up in low income home and lower class all of my life, and it taught me to almost just do things that you don't really want to do, because that's just what life is about. I didn't see myself growing in the ways that I wanted to in my career. Before this industry, I wasn't aware of the actuality of money, what it is, how it works, how it can be used.
So wait, so you're saying you joined an agency in the financial industry
Yes.
and there was no education on finance? So what were you being introduced to when you first started? Yeah, you know what? I hate my job. I don't like going to work. I dread every single morning, but it's money. Welcome back to Keeping It Real. In today's episode, we're going to do something different, but we're doing it intentionally different. We're not talking about products, markets, or strategies. We're actually going to talk about people, about identity, about curiosity, because not every financial advisor comes from finance. And honestly, some of the best ones actually don't. I think you would agree with me on that one, right, Irene?
Yeah, that's exactly why today's conversation actually matters. Our guest is early in her journey, not because she actually lacked direction, but because she questioned whether the path she was already on would still serve her long term.
So today I'd like to introduce Maryam. Maryam is someone whose story doesn't follow a straight line. She comes from a trades background as an electrician. She's deeply into fitness and self-development. She's creative, thoughtful, and she's just started a new chapter in financial services. We didn't bring her on to sell you anything. We brought her on so you can get to know her. Maryam?
Hey.
How are you? Okay,
Good,
before we talk about finance at all, who were you? Describe who Maryam is to everyone before this industry entered your life.
Yeah, sure. So I think personally, to ask a question of it's quite the question to ask oneself, is who was I before the industry, or who am I just in general? So I often reflect on my life and the person I was compared to the person I thought I was, or the person that I'm becoming. Who was I before? I was still the same me that I am today, in the sense of a person who seeks purpose, direction, knowledge, self-improvement, strong relationships, challenges, but also a person who is extremely curious. So that's kind of what led me into this industry. But I was still me in the sense of an eagerness to live my life to the fullest potential, to just squeeze all of the juice out of life. And I lived by the motto carpe diem, and I still do, which translates to seize the day. But I think my definition of seize the day has grown into a new and more profound personal definition. So I hold a better appreciation for the phrase. But the person I was before this industry was someone who was just passively living through my daily life with ideas of opportunities, whether that be in the trades or in teaching the trades in that kind of field. It was very traditional way of thinking, in the sense that I just followed society's rules by going to school, going to work, not really knowing exactly what direction I wanted to take, and not really having a clear path. So my daily life looked like going to work, and I loved my job. I worked as an electrical apprentice, and I still plan on acquiring my license. It just was kind of mundane for me at times, and I didn't, like I said, didn't have a direction of where I wanted to take.
I think you said before you came to Canada very young with your family growing up, what did actually stability or success look like in your household?
It's a great question. Yeah, I came to Canada when I was very young with my family. I was born in Jordan. I came to Canada as a refugee back in 2000 with my family. Grew up in low income home and lower class all of my life, and we still unfortunately do. A family of six now, and very used to just barely getting by. But life was good. We made things work with what we had. I am who I am because of how I grew up, so I know what it's like to struggle. But therefore, I know what not to do. So it's all around me, but I was so caught up with life's daily routine. But essentially, success looked to me like it wasn't a big picture. It wasn't a big picture. Success meant to my immigrant parents, let's bring our kids to Canada. We don't know how the system works, but you can be a doctor and you can be a lawyer. Just throw you to the wolves. So that's kind of what my idea of success looked like. And it also looked like just making a lot of money or being successful in a specific traditional career. So it wasn't really straightforward. My parents I'm very grateful for them, but like I said, they don't understand the system as much. So there wasn't much guidance, fortunately.
I can actually relate to that, Maryam, because being an immigrant myself, and then when we came to Canada, it was exactly the same thing. It was, come to Canada, just work hard and grind, 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 and you'll be okay, right? But that's Canadians today are doing exactly that, and none of them are okay, right? So I can totally relate. Now, you chose trades, which is not an easy path, right? And you kind of answered what I was thinking in my mind there about, what drew you to the profession and things. You were just kind of following the path, right? That was kind of there now. But in doing that, you would have learned a lot. Like trades require accountability, discipline, problem solving on a daily basis, right? What did that kind of work actually teach you? Like having that little bit of a background, what did that teach you?
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful for joining the trades. I kind of just fell into it, but it taught me so much. I'm so much tougher than I was before. It taught me to almost just do things that you don't really want to do, because that's just what life is about. And it sounds wrong, but when you think about it, we do it on a daily basis where, I don't want to do 60 push-ups or 50 push-ups, nobody wants to do that, but you have to do the things that you don't want to do. So that's kind of what it taught me. But it also taught me how to work within a team, how to solve problems. It taught me how to communicate effectively with other teammates and other coworkers and people of authority that I worked with. It taught me resilience and discipline. It taught me that, a lot of construction world is very tough. So, and being a woman and going into that, I wasn't prepared, but I'm very grateful for what I've learned and how tough I've become in that industry, and not to, just to hold your own ground, and having that desire to go to work, kind of grows after a while, because then you see yourself improving, whether it be practically or just in an environment. So I'm very grateful for that, and I, like I said, do plan on still acquiring my license, but we can discuss that at another time.
Like obviously you have many different stages of life. And would you say that the stage of life that you were in when you started the trades, and now, has your definition of success changed?
100%, 1000%, I would say it did. When I started in the trades, I was 21 or 22, I can't remember, between those ages, and I was so different than I am now. And I think my definition of success back then was just, yeah, work, 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 get money, but also there wasn't much guidance, so it was very blurry. My definition of success was very blurry, but I was consuming all of these other outlets online of what success looked like. But I was obsessed with learning about money, and like I said in the beginning, I was so curious all the time. So that's what led me to try to uncover what success really meant for me, and that's what I think I've been doing in my trajectory between the age of 21 to now. I'm almost going to be 26 in a couple months, and I think I've uncovered more what success means to me, because success is an individual thing. I think it's individual to everyone, and success, when people think of the word success, they automatically, well, at least me, think about money, or at least I used to. But also success is health, and not just wealth. It's family relationships. It's just so much more than what people paint it out to be.
Yeah, it's so funny how people don't associate overall happiness with success. They
Yeah.
tend to just associate money with success.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because I know a lot of people who have a lot of money that are not necessarily happy either, right? So
Right.
it's very interesting. Now, this is where your story actually comes in, because you got into the trades. The trades, obviously, I mean, it's always in layers, right? So you start off apprenticing, and you have to do all the courses, so many hours before you can move to the next level, and it's kind of a hierarchy that way, right? So eventually you get your ticket, right, and whatnot. So you weren't failing, you weren't stuck, you were going through the process, and things were working in that process, right? So
Yeah.
when did you start questioning whether this path was the right long-term fit? When did you start looking at options?
I think that's a great question. And what really did it for me was just physically being in the industry and spending the time that I did in the industry and seeing the individuals who were double my age, sometimes triple my age, and still working, and that what their lifestyles were like, or at least what their lifestyles seemed like. They were angry, they were sleep deprived, they ate horribly, they were like overweight sometimes, and like it was just something that I didn't picture myself. I was like, how am I going to be who I want to be, value the things that I want to value, prioritize the things that I want to value fitness, health, food, and good positive vibes when the people that I'm seeing in positions that I most likely will fall into are not that. They're not that. So I think just, yeah, physically seeing it in plain sight, and also just so there's those aspects, but also success ties to wealth, and they weren't making what I thought they were making. When I was like in high school, when I was 18 years old, I thought electricians made like over $150,000 a year, but you don't see that often. You don't see that often at all, and that's not the reality. So it hit me after a year or two being in the industry and just realizing, wow, it's not really what I thought it was.
So then would you say something happened, like a specific moment in time, or did you like slowly realize it over time?
I don't think it was a specific moment. I definitely think it was a slow realization, because I have had so many different examples of it. It wasn't just one person, but it was multiple people. And just, yeah, their mindset wasn't exactly where I saw my mindset to be, or the potential I wanted to get to. So yeah, it was definitely a slow realization.
That's really interesting how you had this preconceived idea as a
Mhm.
teenager, right, into what kind of what electrician does, or what they do, actually what they do and what they earn, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, to earn that kind of income as an electrician, you're owning the business. You're the guy who owns the
Yeah.
business, and the electricians are working for you at that point, right? And I think you realize that being in the trades, and you work really hard. The electricians work
Oh yeah.
really hard to earn. They're earning an okay income, but like you said, a lot of them look run down. They don't look,
Yeah.
they're not healthy, things of this nature, and that's you see that a lot in the trades. They're always tired. They're always beat up, right? Because the trades work you hard, right? You're
Mhm.
earning that money. So you were there, you're doing the job, right? You're working. What actually scared you more? Was it staying where you were and continuing this process, or looking elsewhere and looking at options? What actually scared you more?
I think it was definitely staying where I was. Definitely staying where I was scared me way more because I didn't want to feel stuck. And being such a curious person like I was and I still am, I'm also very optimistic, and I knew that there was something else for me out there. Whether it be within the trade, as because once you get your ticket and once you get your license, doors open up. And so I always had these ideas racing in my mind that if I'm gonna be stuck here, then maybe there's avenues that I can take. Maybe there's other doors that'll open up for me where I can teach the trade. But I also was such an optimistic person in the sense that that fear of staying stuck was so powerful that I was constantly seeking other opportunities. So it was definitely the fear that motivated me, the fear of staying stuck that motivated me to seek other opportunities. It wasn't necessarily what was out there, because yeah, like I said, very optimistic mindset, and I know that I can achieve whatever I put my mind to.
I was going to actually ask you, why do you think you kind of listened to that? But I think you answered that optimistic,
Yeah.
curious, out of curiosity. Were you always like that?
Yeah, I think I was. I grew up with a twin sister, and I think that's a very rare relationship. And we're very, very, very close. I, had a best friend my whole life. So anything that I was thinking, I could tell her. Like we, shared a room growing up. So I think I'm very grateful for her. I've always been that way, and we've both always been that way. And I think it just had to have, yeah, like I said, want to squeeze the juice out of life. I really am such a curious person, almost to a fault. I'm like a curious cat that, I don't have 9 lives, but I'm gonna, I want to live so many lives, and I'm very grateful for that mindset because of the way I grew up. It didn't lead me, most people don't lead lead to that direction. But like I said, having that twin sister relationship really, I'm very grateful for that.
Interesting. You said most people don't follow or listen or follow that direction. But you were working. You weren't working alone. You were working with other people, tired,
Yeah.
exhausted, and questioning their life. Right?
Yeah.
You questioned your life and did something about it. Why do you think they're ignoring that?
I think they're just comfortable.
Being tired?
I think so. I think they're just so comfortable, like with what they have. I don't know. It's honestly a question I ask myself pretty often, and I don't know. I don't know. Maybe people like us, we just have like just more drive and more optimism, more resilience, and we put ourselves through the feeling of doing the thing that we don't want to do and staying consistent. And I don't know how that separates from other people. I often ask myself that, and honestly, like I have such a hero mentality too, where I want to save these people, but I've realized that you can't save everyone.
It's very, very true. You can't save everyone. You can try.
Yeah.
You have to give them the choice, but at the same time, in the end, it's up to them. So let's be honest. Okay, so you were reached out to. How did you find out about the financial services in the first place? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify and say it again before I answer that question. Just before this industry, I didn't have as much discipline as I do now. I didn't have like nearly as much fulfillment in what I was doing on a daily basis. I didn't see myself growing in the ways that I wanted to in my career. Before this industry, I wasn't aware of the actuality of money, what it is, how it works, how it can be used, what it means in an individualistic sense, how to leverage it. Nothing at all. I knew nothing about the Rule 72, compound interest, different insurances. I was naive to all of that. I was just very ignorant. So I got introduced to this industry let me start by saying I'm an avid TikTok scroller, as someone is, my age and in my early 20s. And when COVID started, that was I was 20 years old when COVID started, and TikTok was huge back then, and I was constantly scrolling. And there's so many different niches on TikTok, and I always followed the niche. My algorithm always looked like business, entrepreneurship, money. Sometimes it was like how to make money, how to get rich quick, and I fell victim to those schemes. And although I didn't pay any money, and I'm really grateful, I kind of just tiptoed my way through everything. And I had such an interest in learning about money because I didn't have it growing up, so I really wanted to figure out what this meant for me, and had watched tons of videos, listened to tons of podcasts about entrepreneurship, money, business, all these things. And I think naturally it just led me to this certain network on the internet. And so although I didn't reach out to anyone specifically, someone reached out to me, and kind of was just like selling me the dream, kind of same thing, get rich quick type of deal. But it was more in an entrepreneurial way, and I was attracted to that. And so that's kind of how I got tiptoed into the industry. And yeah, I'm very grateful because it's been, I think, 6 months that I've been in the industry.
And so when someone reached out to you and they were showing you what what it's like to own your own business per se, right?
Mhm.
Is that what you thought what did you actually think the industry was? Like when you met this person and started talking, what did you think you were getting yourself into?
I thought, I'm trying to go back to that era, but I think I thought that it was something. I can't pinpoint it, but I think my idea of what they were telling me it was an opportunity to run your own business, but work remotely and do it from wherever in the world, and be this person who doesn't work hard, it doesn't work all the time, but knows a little bit about finance and mindset, and just that was kind of my perspective of it. Definitely learned more and more throughout the next few months, but it was, like I said, sold the dream. So just working from home, working from anywhere you want, making 10, 20, 50 plus $1,000 per month, and you can do it quick and you can do it fast. And yeah, that's kind of how, and to me, it was like, there are actually people reaching out to me about this. Like, hell yeah, I want in. But I definitely learned my lesson, and yeah, learned that it's much more than that.
Let's come back to that actually, because it sounds like almost immediately you found that they were selling you the dream, and you were, pretty primed for that because you were already looking at you were already curious.
100%.
Has anything changed from then when they first talked to you about that opportunity to now, and what has changed?
A lot has changed since they reached out with that opportunity. I spent, several months after that trying to work things out within their guidelines and how they were training me. And there was always this hunch inside of me, is instinct feeling inside that something just wasn't right here, because it was very much individuals that were not educated on finance, and I realized that later. They weren't educated individuals. They were just trying to. They were in my position. They didn't have X amount of years studying, or not necessarily that you need that, but you could tell there was a lack of education.
Can I just interrupt here 1 second though?
Yeah.
Just for the viewers, because you're going into a topic here, transitioning into a topic. Can you explain what you're talking about? Because you came into this industry, did something happen? Like, did something happen, right? You've transitioned, right? Can you explain that?
Okay. Yeah. So there was. So essentially I was working, and I already had thoughts about quitting my job, like probably a year into, or sorry, like 2 years into where I was working. I was working for a big electrical company, and I always wanted to find an escape, or a different company. I just wasn't happy with them. And then this opportunity came to me. This person reached out and selling me the dream, and then not necessarily did they motivate me to make this decision, but I put my 2 weeks into my job. I had been working there for 3 years. I was making great money, but they didn't motivate me necessarily to make that decision, but it just kind of everything worked out, and I quit my job. And in June 20th was my last day at my job. I haven't worked since, but I transitioned from within June to the industry, and that's kind of the same week that I signed up with this industry, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, signed up, and that was that pivotal transition to not having to go to work, but doing trainings and meetings and things like that, and kind of just dove headfirst into it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then going back to what you were saying before. So you entered the industry with this agency, right?
Mhm.
And then you started having this internal feeling.
Yeah. Internal feelings of, okay, what are they really after? What are their ulterior motives? And those were questions that I asked myself often, just because of the lack of talk about finance, just talk about finance in general, because there was not a lot of it. And sure, you could probably seek it out, but as a new individual in the industry, you're just kind of following their footsteps, and a lot of it just was mindset. No talk about any insurance, no education. I wasn't being educated on much, and that's where I started questioning myself. I'm like, okay, what are their ulterior motives? It was a mixed feeling of I'm happy to be here, but I always had to kind of convince myself to stay and just trust them, because I knew nothing else. I didn't know anything any better.
So wait, so you're saying you joined an agency, a financial industry, in the financial industry,
Yes.
and there was no education on finance. So what were you being introduced to when you first started?
So essentially, we were given presentations. So I'm not going to say there was absolutely no education on finance. There was the standard basic information that was presented to me at first, and that's how we presented to individuals who were potential clients or whatever, that people that we had meetings with. So I will say there was the standard rule of 72, compound interest, which are very beneficial, and I did learn a lot in that sense. But there were no case studies. There wasn't a real, like, rigid, robust, like, getting my hands dirty into the industry. It just felt like I was barely scratching the surface. And I didn't see myself growing at all in that sense. And I was told to, to study in a specific way where you could skip all this and just command F everything and you'll be fine. But personally, that's not how I want to learn. And that's why I had those internal instincts. Like, what are these people actually going after? And honestly, like, it might sound horrible, but I think a lot of the people within that company and that community it almost felt like they didn't have something, and this was giving them something. And whether it be like, I don't know, I don't know how to
Oh, that's
describe it.
interesting. So you came in asking questions. You came in with a lot of questions. You got introduced to this industry, the financial services industry, and were sold a dream. Okay. But there's also, you see this, you're a TikToker. So you always, I'm sure you've seen the dream versus reality in
Oh
TikTok,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
So did it match? When not now, but I'm talking when the first agency, the first time you joined the industry, did it match?
No, not really. Like when I first, you mean like when I first joined the industry, so what the dream looked like in the reality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you getting a concept that it was going to match, like it actually matched each other?
In the very beginning, yes, it did look like a match, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is easy breezy. Like, let me just and you're being like filled with this information of people's stories and like these success stories, and yeah, you're being bombarded with these stories of people who have done it or who were in my position. So it did look like the dream was similar to the reality. But along the way, I kind of picked up the pieces and the mismatches, and then I later then realized that the dream that they're portraying is not the same as the reality, as the hard work that genuinely needs to be put into this industry.
Well, you being curious about, finances and all the story, behind, which I think a lot of us have the same story. We weren't educated in finance. Like you could have explored a traditional bank route.
Mhm.
Why, if so, didn't that feel right for you?
Good question. So actually my twin sister works at a bank, a traditional bank. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know
Um,
that.
it's okay. It's okay. She actually hates her job. The
Oh,
mission is to get her to be my business partner. But yeah, she works at the bank, and I think I kind of saw it firsthand that she would come home and complain all the time. Just she's a bank teller, so the customers that she would get, and money is a touchy subject. People don't like to, excuse my language, f with their money. They don't like to f with their money. So I saw firsthand what the bank was like. I also it didn't interest me at all because I knew that I could seek the information that the bank had and more on my own endeavors and my own personal studying, whether it be on the internet or with books and things like that. And I also was working a job that made me really good money. Like, I was an electrical apprentice and I was making great money, more than a teller was. So I had no interest to go to the bank.
yeah, that's actually really interesting because a bank teller is making what, minimum wage, right? They don't really make a lot of money.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
people think I'm working at the bank. I'm making a lot of money. Irene can attest to this because she spent a lot of years there. But they don't actually make all that much money, right? Now, but it is an income, is what they're seeing. It's an income in the end, and they hate it, but you know what? It's still an income.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know how many people out there right now are listening to this and thinking, yeah, you know what? I hate my job. I don't like going to work. I dread every single morning, but it's money.
They settle. People
Yeah, they
settle.
settle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting because you came from you were in an industry making a decent salary, right? Didn't feel right. You were introduced to a dream that didn't quite match the reality, right? But meanwhile, you're seeing someone working in traditional financial institutions like your sister. So
Mhm.
you're kind of seeing a full realm of everything, right? So then you get introduced to you transition to a new agency, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you transitioned to a new agency, and then can I ask you? So did you see more of a holistic financial service? Like, did you see more of the reality of holistic services when you joined the new agency? Is that what happened?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I learned along the process that not only are there traditional banks, but there's private wealth, and there are agencies, and there's this whole world, this whole community of individuals who are in the finance umbrella industry, but not necessarily valuing the same thing. So you have people in insurance, you have people at the bank, you have people who are, do private investments and things like that. And I was like, wow, like it is so much bigger than I thought. So so I definitely do see that there are more holistic approaches to finance, and I know 100% that you cannot get that at the bank. Maybe you can. I'm not sure. I haven't seen that out there, but no, yeah, there are people out there who genuinely will take care of you financially, and in so many different ways, whether it be in investments or in insurance. And I like to call myself and hopefully like become a financial therapist, and that's what I would have wanted when I was young.
What do you mean by that, financial therapist? Using the idea of holistic services, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you see a financial service or a therapist doing that for clients?
Yeah, so when I think of the word holistic, I think about not treating the symptom, but treating the root cause. And that's what we need to unpack in finance. And that's what therapists do when we work with a therapist in mental health, but also when you work with a nutritionist. They deal with the root cause, not like a doctor. All of these mainstream traditional financial advisors at the bank, doctors, this system I think is just built to treat the symptoms and not the root cause. And so when I think of the word holistic and financial therapist, they kind of intertwine in the idea in the sense of let me build a relationship with you. Let me build a relationship with this person that's sitting in front of me who is, emotionally tied to money and their childhood, and people can make tons of money. Let's say there's an individual making $1 million and they can still live paycheck to paycheck because they just don't understand what it was like, or they grew up, not financially savvy. So it's, like I said, an individualistic approach, and finding the root cause of what's going on, why it's happening, why you want to get financially stable, and that's what it all means.
Okay, so Maryam, that's interesting. I like your approach, because that's everything you said there is very, very true, and I believe in my practice and Irene's practice. We do the same thing. We try to figure out what started your habits to put yourself in this situation now. Where is the root cause of this? Because if we don't address that, it doesn't matter what we do right now. You're just going to go back to that. And we've done many podcasts on that. So I'm glad that that's the avenue you're trying to take now. Are you in this realm of financial therapist? Are you thinking about being an independent by yourself doing this, or are you thinking of developing a let's say a clinic or a team?
I think first I would like to be, I think I'm open to both, but first I would like to be working within a team and learning a bunch of things, because it's only been 6 months I've been in the industry. Although I've learned a ton, I want to be a well-rounded financial planner, a well-rounded financial advisor. I want to be someone who is well respected, well trusted in the industry. So to do that, in my idea of doing that, how I see myself doing that is, working with individuals who I see that they're educated. I know that they've spent years in the industry. I understand their approach. Their approach aligns with mine. Working alongside, a mentor, a director, or someone who, and I'm very grateful to have that in my life currently. And then maybe going independently, or maybe growing a team. Having that autonomy is always an option for me. So I kind of go back and forth, and I think, why not, try both?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. The reason why I ask that is because I see a lot of therapists that you see some that are just working in their individual self practice, right? But I see some that are, have a team of therapists working with them, and it's not, So I was wondering where your mindset was in your focus now. So you're kind of keeping the door open for whatever is going to happen.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to do some quick questions, so you can't overthink this, okay? I want you to kind of come up with the answer when you hear it, if you're okay with that. The first question is, what keeps you grounded when things feel a little bit uncertain?
Keeps me grounded. My why I'm doing this. I think the why is such a big thing, and yeah, my why is, why am I doing it? And then I remember, and when I feel uncertain, I'm like, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for little me. I'm doing it for my brothers and my sisters and my mom and dad, and I'm doing it for my partner, and I'm doing it for my friends. And that's what allows me to get back on track. I think about why I'm doing it.
Okay. And what's one habit you've intentionally built?
The habit, I mean, it's not finance related, but the habit of doing 5 push-ups every day.
Wow. Nice. Okay. Perfect. When you think about when you need clarity, do you associate it with music, silence, or movement?
Say movement. Yeah, movement. I love moving around, taking up space.
Okay, cool. And what does growth mean to you right now?
Growth to me right now means doing the thing that I don't want to do. Getting up and doing the thing that I don't want to do because I know for a fact after I do it, I'm going to feel so much better. Doing those push-ups, doing those sit-ups, playing my guitar, waking up early. So doing the things that I don't want to do necessarily. I mean, there are days I want to do it, but sometimes you just don't want to do it. So getting over that hump.
Cool. What stands out to me about Maryam's story, guys, is that she didn't wait to be unhappy before choosing growth. She really just questioned her path. She's curious while things were still working, and that really takes awareness.
Yeah, well, this episode was really interesting because we had somebody actually changing careers, right? And going kind of cold turkey into a new career.
Yeah.
This by no means is this episode to try to convince anyone from changing careers. But what we wanted to show is, a real life scenario of someone who has transitioned, right? Not you hear about this all the time. Somebody, getting involved in the financial industry, or you hear a lot of podcasts. I'm sure you saw it on TikTok. Becoming a financial advisor and things of this nature. You see that a lot. But this is a real life scenario of somebody who has made that transition. Now, if someone is curious, Maryam, if someone is thinking about this industry and kind of, or any industry really, and thinking about how unhappy they are or questioning should they move on or anything of that nature, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that it is way more achievable than you expect it to be.
Yeah. No, that hits hard because people are really scared for change. Change scares a lot of. It doesn't even matter what it is. People are so scared of change, and I think that fear is probably the thing that keeps people stuck in an unhappy situation, right?
100%. I agree.
Yeah, you see that a lot in people's careers, relationships, everything. Like they know that something's not right. They know they need to move on, but they're scared.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. I agree. Yeah, I was scared. I was so scared. But yeah, just know that it's achievable, and get over that overthinking. And it really your brain plays tricks on you, but you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah. You know what? If Maryam's story resonates with you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out. I found it really interesting in Irene's lightning round there where she asked you some questions. You said movement built you clarity, right? Curiosity is usually the first step towards clarity, and then acting on it and putting it in motion, moving on it is going to develop and define that clarity for you, right? I find that very interesting that was your sense of clarity. It actually puts you in a position where you could move forward. People, thanks for watching Keeping It Real. Again, if you've got any questions or if this story resonates with you, don't hesitate to reach out, click and subscribe.